How's it going, guys? Kind of bored here, taking a 34-hour restart at the truck stop, and you have to excuse the mess in my truck. It's not exactly as clean as I normally keep it, but it's still not too bad. Just got a lot of stuff laying around. Did some picking up today and just trying to kind of straighten everything out, and I got so much junk I can't find room for it. But basically, I thought I would just take a moment to explain to anyone who's curious about trucks and whatnot how everything works, the gauges, gears, whatnot. Um, I know that probably help guys that are new to trucking out. Maybe you're going to trucking school, or maybe you're that guy that's interested in trucking and just curious how they work. So basically, I'm gonna start with the gauges up here. Over here on this side, you have DEF or diesel exhaust fluid. And basically what this is just, the older trucks didn't have this, but it's basically just it's a system basically designed to keep the toxins and carbon emissions down. And a lot of truck drivers refer to it as synthetic hog pee. That's basically what it is. It's just really, really nasty fluid that we have to put in our trucks, and it's supposed to keep emissions down. And then you have your oil pressure, and oil pressure for normally runs around 35 to 40 psi. Starts getting too high up in there, you may need to get it checked out. Water pressure, water temperature rather, excuse me. Water temperature normally runs around between 180 and 200. It starts getting past 200, then you got a real problem. And then of course you got RPMs. Normally in most modern trucks, around 1500 is where you shift. My truck normally runs 65 mile an hour at 1400 RPM. Speedometer, just like on a car. And you have your volts. Normally you want to have around close to about 13.5 or 14 volts is normal in a truck to fire it up. So that's basically letting you know how strong your battery is. You got fuel, you got your primary and secondary air. Now, primary air, which is the one with the number 1 on it there, pretty much is the air that's supplied into the truck. So that's what that is. And then the secondary air is the air that goes to the trailer. So one of those two starts dropping significantly, either you got an air leak, or quite possibly maybe one of the seals in your lines are loose, and I'll do a video about that later to show you how those work. But you have these little rubber seals in the air lines, and that's what keeps the air inside the lines that send the air to the trailer. Then over here you have boost, and that's basically your turbo. It shows you how many pounds of turbo you're using. You going up a hill, you'll probably get to around 30 pounds per square inch of pressure in the turbo, and that's basically what that is. You have mirror heat, temperature for the bunk, your fan, make it go blow harder, higher. Then you got the engine brake. You turn the engine brake on from the steering wheel right here, and then the engine brake has 3 stages. You have stage 1, stage 2, and stage 3. And for those of you that don't know what an engine brake is, that's the little deal that makes the really loud, noise. Makes it a lot of racket. Basically, you can hear the trucks coming down the hills all the time, making that loud noise. And there's a method to the madness there. The engine brake's designed to help slow the truck down without having to overuse the brakes. You don't want to get your brakes too hot coming down a big hill, and especially if you got a heavy load. So that's what that's for. Then you got your traction control and PDL. PDL stands for power divider lock, and basically what that is, to put it in layman's terms, is think of it like 4-wheel drive for a truck. If you're in a situation where you're in a parking lot that's got a whole lot of mud or snow or ice or something like that, your wheels start spinning, you're trying to get out of there, you can turn on the PDL and the mud and snow function there, and it'll help you get out of a situation where your wheels would otherwise spin, because it puts, because see, normally in a truck we only have one drive tire that does all the work, and that's usually the one on the front left and the back. But then if you turn on your PDL, it sends power to both axles, and usually you have your front left and your back right wheel working. So basically, if one of them starts spinning, the other one takes over. So that's basically the idea there. And then you have your suspension dump. Most modern trucks are equipped with air suspension, and a good use for the suspension dump is if you're coming out from under a trailer, you can dump the suspension. It'll lower the back of the truck down, and it'll allow you to come out from under the trailer cleanly instead of having a big plunk on the ground, and possibly messing up the landing gear. And another good use for it is if you're going up under a trailer that's set really low. If it's set too low, you'll have to raise the landing gear, but there are certain situations where if you dump the suspension, it'll help you get up under there without having to do all of that. Then you have your fifth wheel slide. Fifth wheel slide is basically it unlocks the pins in the fifth wheel. Sometimes you may need a hammer and a screwdriver to bust those loose, because I've had it where they get stuck in there either from rust or just they're not wanting to come out with pressure along. So there's too much pressure on the pins or something like that. So sometimes you can bust those loose with a screwdriver and a hammer. It works pretty well. But basically that's just to slide your fifth wheel and distribute the weight in the front. Same idea as the tandems, which I'll have to show you later. Your back wheels on your trailer slide, and that's what they call it, tandems. And you're allowed 34,000 on your drives and your tandems, and you're allowed 12 on your steers. So whenever you go to slide the tandems or the fifth wheel, it just helps you to distribute that weight and get it legal. Park regen, okay, that's basically the idea behind this. Honestly, in this truck, I haven't had much luck with this working very well as it's intended, but basically the idea is if you're parked and your truck's acting crazy, you got check engine lights everywhere, exhaust filter lights. Probably what it is they have filters on these new trucks called DPF filters, and those filters get full of soot and gunk and all of that stuff from the engine, from basically all the black smoke that you saw back in the old days that come out of the stacks, that now all gets trapped in that filter. So how much good that does is really kind of an argument that most people would be against nowadays, even mechanics. But the park regen is basically, in layman's terms, a way to clean out that gunk. So you hit your park regen while you're parked. It revs up the engine. It stays that way for anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour. Stays revved up, and it basically cleans out all of that gunk. And you want to be away from anything that can catch on fire or any hazards, because the thing about it is whenever that happens, the exhaust gets really super hot to the point where you can smell the gunk and stuff in the exhaust, and it smells like a burning fabric or something. It's just a really bad smell. But that's basically what that's for. It cleans out everything. And basically everything else, just like a car. You got your radio, you got your controls for your AC and heater, and right now I have a feature on this truck called Auto Start, which it's on right now. And what that is basically it's a battery pack that's behind the truck. It's designed to run the electronic functions, i.e. lights. If I have a microwave, fridge, whatever, it runs that. I do have a fridge and a microwave, so it runs that. Phone chargers, all of that stuff. It's designed to keep all of that stuff running while you're sitting, and the purpose behind the auto start is once that battery pack starts dying, then this automatically starts up the engine and recharges the batteries. And I forgot to mention these, but this is your trailer air supply and your parking brake. Okay, so the idea behind this, now I use these things a little bit different than most people do, I think. But the way I've always thought about it is when you push the parking brake in, that's when you go. It releases the brakes on the truck and the trailer. So when you push the red and the yellow valve But usually when I pick up the trailer, I leave the parking brake on and I hook up everything, and I push in the rev valve, the red valve there, the trailer air supply, and I just rev it up for a minute. And the idea that I have there is that it puts air into the supply tank on my trailer, because it has a reserve tank in the trailer, and it makes sure that trailer has air in it, and make sure that that in case of a problem with my secondary air up here, it has air supplied in the trailer. That's basically what that secondary air is, by the way. It's a secondary air pressure for the trailer, so it builds up that. Now you don't have to do that. You can leave both valves out, and you can just pump up the air that way, and it's really not going to affect anything as long as you're above 100 pounds of pressure. Most of the time you're good, but anytime you talk to an expert, trucking school, whatever, they're going to tell you to basically build up the air pressure until the safety valve or the pressure valve spits, which is like sound. It just lets all the excess air out, and that usually happens at around 125 psi. And there's all kinds of different ways to test these brakes, but that's something that guys will learn in trucking school or whatever. It's a lot to explain, but in a sense, in layman's terms, this is your parking brake. Just like on a manual car, you push those in, put it in gear, and you go. That's basically your parking brake. So down here we have the gear pattern, and this one's a 10-speed. So you have your first gear in the bottom left, and then you can see right there, top middle is second, bottom middle is third, top right is fourth, bottom right is fifth, and then of course your top left is your reverse, high and low. And then you have, basically, once you get to fifth gear in this truck, that's what makes it a 10-speed. You flip a little switch up right here on the front, if you can see that. Flip that little switch up, and then you bring it back over to the first gear slot right there on the bottom left, and that becomes sixth gear. And then you have seventh gear, eighth gear, ninth gear, and 10th gear. Now all of those bottom gears, depending on the load, depending on many different factors, you will use them differently. In other words, if you're on a big super huge hill and you have a super heavy load, you may want to take off in first. Most guys, even with a super heavy load, as long as they're on minimal hills or flat ground or relatively flat ground, they take off in second with a heavy load. If you have a medium to light load, you can take off in third gear. Now where I start to disagree with a lot of guys is there's guys that now if I'm bobtail, I'll take off in fourth, and bobtail pretty much means that I have no trailer. It's just a tractor itself. So bobtail, I'll take off in fourth. A lot of guys take off in fifth. I think that's a bad idea, because when you take off in that high of a gear, you can feel the transmission working really hard to get that truck to move. The truck alone is 19,000 pounds, so it's not a light vehicle, and you figure you're putting all of that strain on the transmission for what reason? So fourth gear is sufficient to take off bobtail. Third gear with a trailer, even an empty trailer, I recommend third gear. But in trucking school, they'll have a lot of guys start out in fourth, even with trailer, which it works. It's probably not gonna cause much damage or any damage to the transmission, but it's just a personal preference for me, because it cuts down on all the jarring and rocking around that you would have from starting out in higher gear. Because you're putting more strain on the transmission, it tends to kind of jerk you around a little bit when you start out. So I'd rather start out in third with any kind of load, trailer, empty, loaded, whatever, and heavy loads for second. Big hill, heavy load equals first. So that's just a rundown of how I do things. So I hope this video was informative, guys. Hit that like button and let me know what you think about the video, if it helped, and if you have any questions, just comment and ask me, and I'll be glad to help. Thanks.